Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. I'm Bonnie Squires, and I like to interview people that are doing important things in our community, whether it's in charitable work, nonprofit work, athletics, politics. And today we have a very special person that we're interviewing who has such a long list of accomplishments. And she's been with the same agency for, I forget how many years, but she'll tell us soon. Her name is Laura Princiotta, and she is the CEO of SpArc Philadelphia. And she'll tell us all about it. Hi, Laura. Welcome to Bonnie's Beat.
Hi, Bonnie. Thank you for having me.
How many years have you been at SpArc Philly?
Over 30.
Over 30. And the reason that we're talking to Laura today is she's probably got the longest history with SpArc Philly, which also has the SpArc of Philadelphia as one of its umbrella institutions. And there's another one. But they're looking at the 75th anniversary next year, 2023, for SpArc Philadelphia. So tell us what SpArc Philadelphia is all about, Laura.
So SpArc Philadelphia is a family of organizations, including the SpArc of Philadelphia, that is the advocacy organization, and SpArc Services, that is a day program provider. We serve people with disabilities, mostly intellectual disabilities, and we will follow folks from birth all the way through their lifespan. The SpArc of Philadelphia advocates for legislation that will affect people with disabilities, and the SpArc of Philadelphia also works with parents of children in the Philadelphia School District and makes sure that those students have the supports and services that they need. SpArc Services works with people who are 18 years of age or older and helps them find jobs in the community, or if they're not interested in that kind of work, we have a very vibrant cultural arts program. So like Bonnie, like you said, we were started in 1948 by a group of parents of children with disabilities. And back then, those children were not allowed to go to public school with everybody else. So those parents wanted to create something that was meaningful and valuable for their children. And so they started the SpArc of Philadelphia, one of the
I sneezed on the truth. I sneezed on the truth that there was people don't realize that for a long time, and people with kids with intellectual and other disabilities just kept them hidden at home, because they weren't welcome in the schools.
Right.
And that broke their hearts.
Yeah, so to create something meaningful and valuable for their children, they started the SpArc of Philadelphia, which is one of the first SpArcs in the country. Now there are about 600 all across the country. And then from the SpArc of Philadelphia, SpArc Services grew. And then from those two organizations, SpArc Philadelphia grew.
SpArc Services is remarkable in that you have talented staff people who find jobs that are available in the community. Like there was Jeff Brown was building a grocery store a couple blocks from your facility in North Philly. And she was right on it, like as they were digging the hole for the foundation, she lined up that she could get like 3 jobs. Somebody that could prepare salads in the kitchen, somebody that could be a checkout person, somebody that could be a greeter at the door. So where are some of the other places where you've had jobs placed for your people?
Yeah, well, the staff is, they're really committed, caring folks. I say often, nobody comes to work at a small nonprofit to become a millionaire. They come to work here because they care about people, and they do an amazing job. We find people jobs. It runs the full gamut from, like you talked about, maybe a cart person at the grocery store, all the way up to six-figure technology jobs through our neurodiversity in the workplace program. So it really is the core of our mission to help people be included in society, because for so long, and still, this population has been secluded, ignored, marginalized. So that really is a central part of what we do, whether it's through employment or whether it's through the arts.
There was a very interesting documentary on PBS, I think it was on Channel 39 a week or so ago, called A Different Kind of Key. And it started with a woman who had an adult son with intellectual disability. I believe he was nonverbal with his other problems. And she searched and sought and found out the very first man who was ever diagnosed with autism in the United States of America. Now, autism, very often people aren't diagnosed until they're adults. So it's a fascinating documentary. And I sent you the link to it because I thought it was so special.
Yeah.
But you do a lot for people with autism, and people on the autism spectrum, they're included in your definition of intellectual disability, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you have to explain what neurodiversity means.
So we're all neurodiverse, meaning that our brains are different from each other. So that is a term that that autistic people like to use to define their difference. And it's not just for folks who have autism. Any kind of difference in the brain can be described as neurodiverse.
But you reached out to a number of corporations in order to find positions, because you discovered that the people that were coming to your facility who were diagnosed with autism, they had special gifts that weren't usually recognized in the workplace because of their difficulty in looking people in the eye, in being interviewed the way most people are interviewed for a job.
Yeah, so these are very talented people who in a traditional interview setting might not do so well. They are uncomfortable holding eye contact for any period of time. They might not want to shake your hand. They might not know how to sell their abilities. So what we've done is work with large corporations to modify the interview process so that hiring managers can see the value that these potential employees bring and can see their expertise. So rather than sit across a desk from somebody and talk, they work on a project, and the project is developed with us and the company. So it has a connection to the work that these potential employees would be doing. And, we have people with fantastic jobs all over the country, people working virtually, people doing all kinds of technology-related jobs. We just worked with a company in Colorado where we hired engineers for that company. So that's been a very successful initiative of ours and has made a huge difference for a population of very talented people who were excluded from the workforce for, reasons that can be addressed.
But also, many of them were able to secure jobs because they were great with technology, especially. They were terrific with computers, but it never worked out for them because their coworkers didn't understand them. Nobody was assigned to lead them. Talk about the big company you work with locally.
So we work with SAP North America locally. I mean, there's many others. Bank of America and Dell also are wonderful partners. And, you know, those folks who were lucky enough to get hired, and maybe that job didn't work out for one reason or another, what we try to do in those circumstances is retrain those managers. Very often a manager will reach out and say, hey, I'm having this issue with this employee. I'm not sure exactly how to address it with them. We will help in those circumstances. And then we try to be proactive and train those hiring managers at the beginning so that if there is somebody that we need to speak in a very concrete way with, then that manager understands that going in. It's made a big difference.
SAP was like the first one that you partnered with because their executive vice president, who would fly in all the time from the space in Texas, he has 2 adult children, both on the autism spectrum. Both brilliant. His children are brilliant, but in ways that are different from what you usually assume in an academic setting.
Yeah, I mean, research has shown very, very clearly that with a more diverse workforce, and diverse means, a million different things, that companies do better. Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity for the population with autism, it was the right time. And SAP and Dell and Bank of America and the other large companies that we've worked with have been very, very helpful to us in spreading the word and in recommending our services. And it's a busy department of our organization, that's for sure.
But it also shows that the jobs that haven't been filled in the past have bodies waiting and talented people waiting to fill those jobs, but you have to alert their sensitivities because sometimes a person with autism can't bear bright lights or music affects him or her in a different way. But the interesting thing about SAP was when you first started with them, they had more volunteers from their full-time employees than you had candidates for the jobs.
Yeah, and we have found that in the other companies as well. Pretty much everybody either has been affected themselves or knows someone who knows someone or is a parent or a sibling of somebody with autism. So it has been growing. It's a growing department and a very successful one with hundreds of people employed across the country.
And then the pandemic hit, COVID. And instead of having 400 people show up every day to your facility, you had to close the facility and switch to virtual. Talk about how you and your staff were able to do that and what you lost in the process.
So the pandemic was devastating, obviously, to our organization and to most others across the country. The state asked us to close. We were closed for 3.5 months. And, when we first heard that edict, we thought, oh, well, it'll be, a week or two and we'll be back. Well, when we realized that that wasn't happening, the staff stepped up. I can't tell you how wonderful and creative they are. And we started virtual programming. We started with a couple of days a week, and we expanded to actually 6 days a week, day classes, evening classes, employment-related, arts-related classes. And after we reopened, well, I can say even now, we're only at about 40% of attendance of where we were pre-COVID. So there are a lot of people. We have a waiting list of, over 100 people waiting to come back. We have the same challenge that most businesses in the country has, which is finding employees. So as we hire a new employee, we are able to bring people back. So it's taking longer than we had hoped, but recently we've been able to hire a good number of people and bring some folks back.
In the meantime, the state office that funds the services for all the people who are getting social service agency services the way they did from yours, because it wasn't one-on-one anymore, was virtual. The deputy director in Harrisburg decided to cut back the funding. Am I right? And how many agencies did she put out of business across the state?
Well, there were a lot of agencies across the state, over 60, that were operating on the edge financially. And when COVID hit, the state helped organizations financially, which was great. But some of them were just too close to the edge and were not able to continue. So over 60 closed. Now,
how many thousands of individuals did those 60 agencies service that lost services?
Close to 6,000 people.
6,000 people.
Yeah. With
disabilities that depended upon the social service agency that had been giving them programs.
Right. Right. I mean, it's been a tough time. And for our population, it's been really sad because they've had to stay at home. Parents had to quit their jobs. People regressed. And they were very, very isolated. We are still making phone calls to people at home weekly, at least to check in with them, to continue our relationship with them, to talk to them about what's going on in their life, what's happening here, just for some connection and stimulation. So that's still happening.
Well, we have a new governor who's going to be installed, and maybe he'll replace some of the unfeeling people in Harrisburg who didn't realize what their cutting back on funding was doing to social service agencies, and to how many thousands of people that lost services?
Yeah, there was a lot of people. So we're operating right now under what they called enhanced rates. So they actually increased our reimbursement rates. But once the federal emergency is over, 6 months after that, we revert to those other lower, considerably lower rates, reimbursement rates. So, it's been very hard to budget and to know what's going to happen moving forward. But, I think we are in a good place. Our staff is strong. We are not going anywhere. We are here, and we'll continue our mission to serve people with disabilities and help them grow and be as independent as they can be.
In addition to intellectual disability, you also service people with physical disabilities on top of the intellectual disability. So I've seen people at your facility that are in wheelchairs, that have feeding tubes. There are restrictions on what they're allowed to eat and when they're allowed to eat. But you weren't trained as a social worker. Ironically, what was your training, Laura Princiotta?
Well, my training was actually, my undergraduate degree is in secondary education. So I was trained as a teacher. And then my graduate degree was in nonprofit management. movement. So I finally got there.
But when you started at SpArc Philadelphia, what did you start as? What job did you have?
Well, I started as a volunteer. We had, at the time, I had a dance studio in Center City, Philadelphia. And one of my students worked here at SpArc, and they had a singing group called the Bright Hopes, and they would stand in a line and sing. And she said to me one day, "Would you be interested in doing a little choreography for this group?" And I said, "Sure." So I started as a volunteer in 1989 or 88 or so. And I've kind of been here ever since. This place got under my skin, and it's not just what I do, it's who I am.
But your husband is also involved in this movement, right?
Yes, he worked in the same field for probably 40 years. He's retired now, but yes.
And her husband's name is Stu, right?
Yes, Stu Boyer, yes.
And he's a remarkable person in his own right. But he's also always been supportive of Laura because she carries a heavy load with how many employees do you have now, Laura?
Well, now we're about 90, but when we're full, we have about 135, 140 employees.
Okay. And you also have to interact with elected officials, right? But then you've got supportive people like State Representative Joe Hohenstein, who has a hearing disorder, who's always been an advocate for people with disabilities.
Yeah. I mean, the legislators have been very responsive and very helpful to us. And of course, the people that you know in the legislature have helped us a lot.
And Derek Green, who just left the legislature because he's one of the dozens of candidates running for the mayor of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He has now a grown son that's in the system.
Yes.
But he's really remarkably devoted to the disability community.
He is definitely a good friend of ours.
And Cindy Bass has been helpful in the past.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of elected officials who either have a family member with a disability or a neighbor or someone that they know and work with. And it makes them even more sensitive than somebody who doesn't.
Right.
But when you ask people and they start to think about it, they all know someone either in their family or in their neighborhood or in their bridge club or in their swim club that has a family member with an intellectual disability. And suddenly their eyes light up. And when you tell them how easy it is to include these people in the community, there are now churches and synagogues that have services that are inclusive, that have, organizational dinners that welcome people with intellectual disabilities. Because sometimes you hear sounds that you don't understand. And it's hard for parents when they take their kid somewhere. They don't want people staring at them. But at the same time, they want to be able to explain the behavior patterns of a kid with an intellectual disability.
Yeah, this is also why inclusion is so important, not just to expand the life of the person with the disability, but to educate the community as well to the value that people with disabilities can bring, that people are people and we're all different, and those differences enhance our community and make it better. So that's the other part of our mission, not just the person focus, but the community focus as well.
You also run meetings and classes for parents and grandparents. Very often, a grandparent is raising a child because you're dealing where you are located in North Philly. You're dealing with the poorest of the poor, the weakest of the weak. Am I right?
Yeah, it is one of the poorest areas in the country, not just, in Philadelphia, but also in the country. And so not only do the folks we support have a disability, but poverty affects their lives and their families' lives as well. So there are advantages to being here. We are needed in this area, and it's important that we're here.
But 75 years, I can't think of too many other agencies that do service for disempowered people that have been around for 75 years. What do you plan for the observance of your 75th anniversary?
Well, yeah, we have a very rich history, and we will be throughout the next couple of months. We've written 75 stories that we will be rolling out about our history, some of the creation stories, if you will, of our organization, and then some of the really cool things that we've done over the past few years. We will be rolling those out. And then in the spring, probably in May, we're going to have a big celebration with all stakeholders, families, everybody. So it's exciting. It's a milestone. I'm glad to be able to be here to celebrate with everybody.
But in addition to celebrating the 75th anniversary, there are other things that you'll continue doing. You just rolled out the most amazing video. Who did that video of a recap of 2022?
Jamie O'Brien is our Director of Marketing and Development, and her team is incredible. They do such an amazing job, and they like to create those year-end videos and show some of the people and places that we have gone and things that we have done over the past year. So that comes from her office.
But you also have relationships with the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the Cherry Street Art Center.
Yes.
And you've made arrangements for your program participants to visit all these museums and then to come back and to emulate some of the paintings, some of the artwork that inspired them while they were there.
Yeah, the arts program is very exciting and very vibrant. And all of the programs that we have here have some kind of connection to the community. It's part of kind of enlarging the world for the folks that we support. And their artwork has been exhibited all over the city, at City Hall, at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, at LaSalle University, at Chestnut Hill College, at
Temple University,
at Temple, and at Magic Gardens, all over the place. And it's part of what we talked about before, which is A, showing the talent and value of people with disabilities, and B, educating the community to their value and what they can bring.
And when Representative Jim Roebuck was like the head of the education committee in the state legislature, he always showed up at the art exhibit every year, and he always bought a piece of art to display in his office.
Yes, a very good friend of ours. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. A longtime friend and supporter.
Yes.
But there were others too. I'm losing a name right now. She was injured in a boating accident that left her in a wheelchair for many years.
Yes. Christine Tartaglione.
Yeah, Tartaglione.
Yes.
State senator.
Also a very good friend.
And she would buy some ceramic work to put on display in her office.
Yes.
I mean, these people, they put their money where their mouths were.
That's always a good thing, especially for a nonprofit organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now we've got a new governor coming in. Governor Tom Wolf was helpful. Am I right?
Yes.
He and his wife were supportive.
Yes.
But Josh Shapiro, I think he'll be even more supportive because
that would be wonderful.
Because of his experience in the state legislature for years before he became the Attorney General for the state. So on the 17th of January, he will be sworn in, and it'll be a new era in Harrisburg. So, and even though the Republicans will control one of the houses, we hope that the other house, which is now going to be controlled by the Democrats, will be able to get on with their work and not just block everything.
Well, we're very hopeful. We're very hopeful.
We're very hopeful, very hopeful. My guest today has been Laura Princiotta. Let's put on the screen, if we can, the website for SpArc Philadelphia, SpArcPhilly.org, so that people can tune in there. And if they want to donate, they're free to donate. And they can see what goes on at this remarkable agency that's about to observe its 75th anniversary. Happy anniversary, Laura.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Well, you do such a terrific, important job in the community. It's been a pleasure having you here. So Laura Princiotta was our guest today, and we'll see everybody on Bonnie's Beat next time.